Hey everyone, welcome back to Matt Comics Reviews, week 2 actually of the comic book review roundups. So obviously technically we're in the same week, but obviously what I was reviewing before were last week's comics, and this time we're more up to date with 5 comics which I've purchased this week, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to discuss them. So what have we got? Well, we've got the 4 new Rebirth titles, which all came out this week, obviously following on from the big DC Universe Rebirth last week, which I discussed in the previous episode, and I thought that was really good. So yeah, I was pretty excited to see these 4 titles coming out today, and yeah, it was really good to read them, and obviously I'll be giving my feedback individually on each one, the strengths, the weaknesses, etc., and commenting on what we might see in the future perhaps. Other than that, also got this one, which is Civil War 2, number 1, although technically number 2, or well, possibly number 3, because I think there was another preview one or something, because there was actually number 0, which I've also read, but this is the first sort of main part, introducing the characters, the moral dilemmas, and getting right into the action. So I thought we'd discuss the Marvel one first. So what was good about it? Well, the artwork was really good. Again, the first one, number 0, was really good as well in terms of the artwork. And again, we had that here. We had some great action scenes, loads of superheroes. I mean, there was absolutely no shortage of superheroes. They were all there, you know. And there was quite a lot of action going on. A really interesting ending. Some sort of quite powerful emotional scenes actually as well. And we got a better idea of the general moral conflict going on here. I'm going to have a few spoilers here as I just briefly explain the plot. I'll try not to go into too much detail, but anyway, basically the idea is that they start off fighting against some sort of out-of-this-world threat, again, as they normally do. But this time they've actually been able to sort of, through like a clean sweep, they've managed to avoid the end of the world because they had forewarning from one of these mysterious new Inhumans who we saw in number 0, who has the power to predict future events and what's actually going to happen. And this links in with what Captain Marvel is trying to do in terms of predicting events before they happen so they can stop it. And obviously, as you can see on the cover with Iron Man, he doesn't like it. And basically there's a clash of ideologies we're kind of introduced in. And what happens at the end is they go off without him, without giving warning, and some pretty shocking stuff happens. I don't want to give too many spoilers just in case you haven't read it, but I'm just going to go sort of into the review what I thought about it. So obviously the artwork was great. I think the concept is good. Obviously not entirely original. I know it's been done in films before, but certainly for Marvel, this is their first sort of take on this interesting idea of like, can we sort of prevent crimes before they happen, and can we sort of jurisdict people based on their intention or supposed intention. So yeah, it's really interesting. The problem I had with it was the writing at some points. It seemed a bit... I understood he was trying to sort of make it casual, but it wasn't great dialogue at some points. I thought it was a bit poorly written, and I held it back a little bit. Also, there's a really weird part. I had to go into slight spoiler here, but sort of Thanos appears, but yet the whole thing is kind of rushed. The fighting bit, so the second fighting bit, where the sort of disaster happens at the end. You'll see if you read it what the disaster is, but it sort of felt a bit rushed. It was in like one panel, and that was like a flashback as well. So the pacing was a bit off as well. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 on Comic Book Roundup. There's a lot to like about it, and I'm hoping that it sort of continues on more like the first one, number 0, in terms of the writing. The artwork is fine, and the plot is getting really interesting. So I am looking forward to it. I'm not going to drop it. I'm still going to keep on and see how it progresses. But I thought there were a few issues with it which kind of held it back a little bit. So next up, I think we'll discuss Superman Rebirth. Now, I think with a lot of Superman stories recently, anyway, it's had a few problems, at least for me personally, kind of getting into them really. And my concern with this rebirth issue was that it wasn't really so much a rebirth, but more of a sort of, well, it was a rebirth, but it was more of sort of a rounding up of the previous storylines. And for someone who hasn't really read that much of the sort of the New 52 Superman or whatever, it was quite difficult to follow what was going on. And actually, in the story, not very much happened. There were some good flashbacks, and so it was quite interesting. But at the same time, basically the whole thing was kind of set underneath Superman's gravestone, as it were, his memorial, and it was him meeting. I think I can't remember her name, is it Lana or something like that. I apologise about that. You'll know better than I am. I don't read that much Superman, but anyway, they were meeting together and underground, and then they were discussing things. He thought that he could bring Superman, the other Superman, because there's actually two Supermans here, which a little bit confusing for me anyway. But I mean, I sort of heard, like, in the Rebirth, for example, about the Superman dying, that sort of stuff. But having not followed it, it did make it difficult. I'm sure if you had followed it, perhaps it would be better, and you would have read it better. I give it a 6.5 because I mean the artwork was really good. I do like Superman. He's kind of a character that I'm thinking I might get into. I mean, I'm more of a Batman fan before, but I thought that it might be interesting to kind of explore him as a character a bit more. There were lots of good parts. My concern was not very much happened, and for Rebirth issue, I really wanted to see stuff happening. And I think in all of the others, we had, well, perhaps possibly the exception of the Green Lantern, which I'll come on to next, but I think a lot of stuff happened, and the Superman one was a little bit dry for me in that respect. So next up we'll do the Green Lanterns. This was sort of like the third best. I mean, all of the Rebirth titles I really enjoyed, I must say. This was sort of like the third best or the second worst for me, but it was still a really good title. I believe it's by Jeff Johns, who was the one who wrote the Rebirth, the main event issue. In terms of the plot, there were some interesting things. One of them, he's threatened as like a terrorist, and it's on his sister's garage doors, and there's sort of an interesting thing going on there. But really, all that happens is these two of them, the two new Green Lanterns, they're sort of amateurish and they're quite strong, but they don't have much experience, and they are sent out on like a sort of training mission, unaware, of course, by Hal Jordan, who's going away on like an intergalactic space mission, and they're basically told to work together. And we see the new these Red Lanterns, who are going to be like the villains for at least the first story arc of the main Green Lantern series. So it was kind of interesting, and it had most of the things I think you'd enjoy about the Green Lanterns, the kind of intergalactic feel to it, an interesting dimension between these two new characters, and gave some more depth to their storyline, which is obviously going to be really good. It's one of the important things. For me, I'm not sure if I'll be getting any more of the Green Lanterns. Not quite what I'm interested in. And back again as well, for this title, I felt not a lot happened. I get it was building up to the villains, but the actual storyline itself didn't really have much to do with villains. It was just sort of Hal Jordan breaking up into a squabble between the two of them by like a villain, this Manhunter, which he sort of made himself as a test. So it was good, but not great. So I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. But onto the better one, the really good titles from this week, I thought. So first of all, we'll do Batman first of all. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a massive Batman fan. I'm really looking forward to reading some more of the New 52. I've read some of it. Mainly read stuff before the New 52, but Snyder's run I've heard is really good, and certainly the stuff I've read so far is great. And this one is actually Snyder and the new writer, Tom King. And yeah, it was really good, actually, I thought. The only complaint I had, it felt, I mean, obviously it's the same length, but it felt quite short, and you did feel like you wanted more of it. And also the storyline was fairly simple. Having said that, I'd rather a simple storyline which you can actually follow and really engage with, and that's what this was. I thought it was really good. The artwork and the colouring absolutely fantastic, I think. And the storyline, the reinvention of the Calendar Man as this sort of person who malts with the seasons was both really good from perspective imagery, as in the idea of the rebirth, sort of being born again, both as this new character and also the idea of with the seasons, was really well played throughout it. And yeah, I thought he was a really good villain, and the action scenes with Batman really good. Yeah, it was fast paced. It was a good introduction to this new character, Duke, who isn't the Robin, but he's going to be sort of Batman's new, not officially a sidekick, and that's quite important, but the new person who's going to be working with him, which is quite interesting as well. So we'll certainly see how this one goes, but for me, it was really strong. And I'll certainly be buying the Batman issues coming up. So next, well, last actually, is this one, the Green Arrow. And I was really impressed with this one, actually. I hadn't really read much Green Arrow. I obviously knew who he was. I'd sort of read some Batman stuff with him in, but I'd never actually sort of read his own comic. And actually, I thought it was really interesting. Actually, it was quite funny at times. Had a little element of humour going on there, and I thought it was well drawn. I loved the action scene. I even though I know there's quite a lot of history between the Black Canary and the Green Arrow, which was kind of taken out with the New 52, and the fans were really happy it's back in again. And yeah, I thought that was done really well, actually. And in terms of the plot, the Underground Men, I did like the Underground Men to an extent. My problem was because they were all masked, and obviously it's just one introduction issue, they didn't really feel that developed. But the fact that they're sort of set up to the main villains, at least for the first story arc, certainly hopes, or certainly I hope will make them sort of more developed and more interesting. And yeah, it'll be really fun to see how that develops. I may actually, this is the first one. Obviously, the Batman I'm going to pick up, but the Green Arrow I think might be the other thing that I pick up to start with, and see how it develops. Really, the storyline. Certainly, it's an interesting dynamic. I enjoy the kind of political commentary which is in there. It's certainly something I quite like. Obviously, not overly forced, and I think that's a good thing. And that's actually one of the things it did quite well in the sort of comedic scene at the start, where he's dating some sort of conservative Republican daughter or something. And yeah, I thought it was really good, actually. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Perhaps, I mean, it could have been a 9 out of 10. My problem with it was perhaps just the villains, because they were just a group of people, maybe seemed a bit simple. Okay, thanks for watching.